All right, we're going to go ahead and start into the head build now. First thing we're going to do is we're going to build up the seesaw onto the head block. So you're going to need your seesaw tie pliers at the end here. I've already pressed the bearings in and the cups. I just did it as I was pulling them out of the package so I didn't lose them. Same with the tie bars. I pressed the bearings in already. Just make sure when you get all this stuff pressed in here that you get them in all the way, that they're seated fully so you don't have any binding or anything like that. And then you're going to need your screws and the balls for the seesaw. And don't forget about your spacers here. One thing you want to pay attention to when you're building this up, the balls for the ball links go on the leading edge of the rotation, so make sure you have them on that side when you build it up. Make sure you put some CA onto the bolts and the links when you screw all this stuff into the plastic. So I'm going to go ahead and build this and we'll come back and take a look. Alright, here's the seesaw attached to the head block. Like I said, make sure you get this ball in the right spot so that it's on the leading edge of the rotation. Make sure you Loctite your metal to metal here, CA all your metal to plastics, and that's it. And it's ready to go. Make sure it's nice and loose and free from binding. Okay, next up we're going to get the blade grips and everything here attached to the head block. We're also going to put the bell cranks on. A couple of things to pay attention to while you're doing this. Pay attention to the bearing stack out. It's laid out pretty good in the manual, so just make sure you pay attention as you're doing it. A couple of things to look out for. There's these spacers here that go between the outside roller bearing and the thrust bearings. Make sure you get that in there. That needs to be in between them. Keep an eye on your the raceways for the thrust bearings. One's it's got a bigger ID than the other one. The larger ID goes towards the center of the head. Make sure you pack these with grease. Any good wheel bearing grease, high speed grease, anything like that will do just fine. Another thing to watch, they give you 2 large spacers and 3 of these smaller spacers that go between the head block and the blade grip. That's so you can set the dampening, get it tight, or if it's too tight or too loose, you can make adjustments to it. I typically start out with one of the large ones and 2 of the small ones on each side and kind of work from there. It's going to vary if there's a little bit of tolerance differences in these, so just go ahead and start out with like I said, the 1 large, 2 on the small. Don't get crazy when you're cranking these down. Keep checking the blades, rotating them as you're tightening down the spindle bolts. And if it starts getting notchy and you've still got a long way to go, then you need to take it apart and take some of these spacers out of there. You crank it down too far and you'll potentially destroy these rollers inside the thrust bearing, so don't get too crazy with that. Then the bell cranks, they come set up with the factory like this. This is a good starting point, so just go ahead and put those on straight, and then don't forget to put the spacers in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put this together and we'll come back and take a look at it. Alright, we got all these, got the blade grips and everything on now. Seesaw's on from the previous step, and we put the bell cranks on. Important things to watch out for. Don't crank these down too tight that they're going to bind up, so make sure they're good and loose. The spacers here, I ended up using 2 spacers on each side. That's got me to right where I could tighten it up and it still moves pretty free. There's a little bit of notchiness there. You might feel that just a little bit, but if you can pull out on the blade grips and remove that notchiness, then that's going to be fine. That's just about perfect. So we got that done. So now the next step is going to be attaching the fly bar cage and the fly bar. So we'll take a look at that here next. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get the fly bar put together now. And you're going to need your fly bar, obviously. Your fly bar cage pieces, these balls that go in between the cage, and then the links. You need to put the links on now, so make sure you size these ones up because you won't be able to get them off again unless you disassemble the fly bar cage. Another thing to watch out for, there's 4 millimeter washers that go between the cage and the seesaw bearing. So, make sure you get those in there. If not, everything won't line up properly. A little trick here to get it to work out right. Put your fly bar through first. Get your fly bar in there, and then go ahead and slide those brass washers on, and then bring your fly bar cage in and assemble everything that way. It's just easier. You're not trying to fight to slide that little brass washer down in between there as you're sliding the fly bar through. So I'm going to go ahead and get all this put together. Again, make sure, you know, metal to metal, plastic to plastic, or metal to metal is Loctite, plastic to plastic is CA. Don't forget to size these links up. Also verify that they're the same, they're both the same length, and then go from there. Alright, now I've got the fly bar and the fly bar cage attached. See, I got the links on here. Make sure, like I said, you just get those sized up. Get everything ready to go. Now at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and get the links that go down to the swash plate and the links that tie between the bell cranks and the seesaw, and snap all this stuff together and the washout, and just kind of get it all put together, not on the main shaft, but just putting it all together right now and setting it aside, because it's easier to not have the head on the helicopter while you're building the frame and getting the servos installed in the first part and stuff like that. So what I typically do is, you know, just get all these parts and kind of snap them all together and set this part aside. So, you know, towards the end of the build, that's when I'll put this stuff on and finish the head setup and attaching the head and stuff like that. Okay, so that's it for the head build.